There is a grief living in your chest right now that does not belong to you. Not metaphorically, not as a poetic way of saying you've been through a lot. Literally, the weight you've been carrying in that specific place behind your sternum, the heaviness that arrives without a story attached to it, the sadness that surfaces at moments that don't justify it, the ache that has no name and no clear origin, that is not yours. It never was. And the reason it has never fully healed, the reason it keeps returning even after you've processed, even after you've cried, even after you've done every piece of work you knew how to do, is because you have been trying to heal something through understanding that was never installed through experience. It was absorbed, silently, without your consent. And the Arcturian Federation has been tracking this specific pattern, this particular form of grief that does not originate in the soul carrying it, across thousands of fields in this current planetary window. What they've observed is precise. It is not general empathic sensitivity, though that is part of the architecture. It is something more specific than that. It is a frequency layer seated in the emotional body that is composed almost entirely of grief that entered your field from outside, from your lineage, from the people you loved most, from collective fields you passed through at moments when your energetic boundaries were open in ways you didn't know how to close. And it has been sitting there, in your chest, in your throat, behind your eyes, functioning as if it were yours, shaping your experience of the world as if it were yours, exhausting your system as it tried to process something that had no resolution available to it because it was never your story to resolve. Today, that changes. Before we go anywhere near the healing layer of this transmission, I need you to do something simple. Put your feet flat on the floor if you can. Feel the surface beneath you actually holding your weight. And bring one hand to the center of your chest, not pressed, just resting. Warm palm against that space where the grief lives. Let the contact be real. Let it be present. Because what moves through Arcturian Federation in this specific transmission was coded for the soul who has that weight in their chest and has been carrying it long enough to be exhausted by something they cannot even fully explain to themselves. That soul is you, and you are not broken for carrying this. You are extraordinarily sensitive, and sensitivity at the level yours operates was never a flaw. It was the precise mechanism through which you absorbed what was never meant to become permanent. Let me describe the mechanism to you, not in vague spiritual terms, in terms that will make your body nod before your mind has finished processing the words. You have always felt other people's pain with a specificity that most people don't experience. Not just empathy, something more literal than that. You sit with someone who is grieving, and something in your chest responds as if the grief is happening to you. You walk into a room where there has been conflict, and your nervous system registers it before anyone speaks. You absorb the emotional texture of a space, of a conversation, of a relationship, and you carry it home in your body without choosing to, without knowing you've taken it on until you're alone and wondering why you feel so heavy when nothing in your own life justifies the weight. This is not imagination. This is not emotional instability. What you are experiencing is the function of an empathic field whose boundaries were never taught to close. Not because you were weak, but because nobody around you had the framework to teach you that closing was even possible. You came into this world with energetic receptors operating at a resolution that far exceeded the people around you. And those receptors, brilliant and precise as they are, were absorbing frequency information from every field they came into contact with, including grief, including pain that belonged to your parents, your grandparents, the collective emotional field of every environment you grew up inside of. And the grief that was absorbed earliest went deepest. The grief you took on before you had language for what grief was. That grief is seated in the causal layer of your emotional body. It does not have a memory attached to it. It has a frequency. And that frequency has been running in your chest as a background signal for so long that you may have stopped recognizing it as something separate from you. It may have become what feels like just the way your heart is, a heaviness that is simply there, a tenderness that has no clear cause, a readiness to cry that surfaces at odd moments and leaves you wondering what is actually wrong. Nothing is wrong with you. Something that was never yours has been stored in your field, and your field is ready, has been ready, perhaps for longer than you realize, to release it. If what I just described landed somewhere true in your body, not as a concept but as a recognition, something in the chest or the throat that responded before your mind had finished evaluating the words, write 444 in the comments right now. In the Arcturian numerical system, 444 is the frequency of held and guided release. It means something is being safely dissolved, not ripped away, not forced, dissolved with the precision of an intelligence that understands the architecture of what it's working with. When you write it, you are not marking engagement. You are setting an intention in your own field. You are telling the grief that has been living in your chest, I see you. I know you're not mine, and I am ready to let you go. Now I want to take you into something more specific, because the grief stored in empathic fields does not dissolve through general healing work alone. It requires something targeted, a frequency intervention at the exact layer where the absorbed emotion is anchored. And that layer is different depending on how the grief entered your field. The Arcturian Federation identifies 3 primary entry points through which non-original grief becomes stored in the emotional body. The first is ancestral transmission, grief that moved through your bloodline and was encoded in the epigenetic layer of your DNA before you were born. This is the grief that has no story attached to it. You cannot trace it to any experience in your own life because it did not originate in your own life. It arrived with you. It was part of the frequency inheritance of the lineage you chose to incarnate into. And you chose that lineage, the Arcturian Federation is clear about this, not randomly, but because your soul had the capacity to transmute what previous generations could not complete. The second entry point is relational absorption. This is grief that entered your field through proximity to someone whose emotional body was carrying more than it could process. A parent, a primary caregiver, a partner, a child. When your energetic field is in sustained close contact with another field that is saturated with unprocessed grief, and when your empathic receptors are operating at the sensitivity level yours operate at, absorption happens automatically. You did not choose it. You were not naive for allowing it. It is simply what an open empathic field does in the presence of overwhelming emotion in someone it loves. The third entry point is collective absorption, grief taken on from larger fields, communities in crisis, collective trauma moving through cultural or geographic fields you inhabited. Some of you have absorbed grief from fields you were barely conscious of being part of. And all 3 of these, the ancestral, the relational, the collective, can be present simultaneously in a single emotional body, which means what lives in your chest right now may be a composite. Layers of non-original grief stacked over years, over decades, functioning as a single unified weight that you've been trying to understand through the lens of your own experience. searching for the story that explains the feeling, when the feeling was never generated by your story. This is why the processing never fully resolves it. This is why the healing plateaus. You've been working with the grief as if it were yours to integrate. But non-original grief doesn't integrate. It releases. And release requires a different mechanism than integration does. Bring your awareness back to your hand on your chest. Feel that center. And now, without forcing anything, without trying to manufacture an emotional response, simply allow the question to exist in that space. How much of what I carry here is actually mine? Let the question sit there. Don't answer it with your mind. Let your body answer it. Let your chest answer it. Because your field already knows. It has always known. The exhaustion of carrying grief that has no resolution available to it. Your system has been signaling that exhaustion for years. Today is the moment the signal gets a response. If tears are moving right now, or if there is a pressure behind your eyes that feels like tears wanting to arrive, write 555 in the comments. 555 in the Arcturian frequency system is the code of release in motion. It marks the moment stored emotional frequency begins to move toward the surface. Tears at this level are not sadness. They are electromagnetic discharge, the physical body's most efficient mechanism for releasing stored frequency from the tissue. What moves is leaving. What leaves was never yours. Write 555 and let your field receive the confirmation that the release is real and it is safe. Now let's go into the healing layer directly, because this is where the transmission shifts from information to activation. Close your eyes if you're in a space where that's possible, or soften your gaze until the world around you blurs gently at the edges. Keep your hand on your chest, and with your next breath, slow, unhurried, reaching the bottom of your lungs, allow your awareness to drop fully into that center beneath your palm. Feel what is there. The Arcturian Federation is directing the primary frequency of this transmission into the emotional body right now, specifically into the layer where non-original grief is stored. The 528 Hz resonance, documented in cellular biology research as the frequency associated with the restoration of coherence in damaged tissue, is moving through the emotional body's grief architecture and beginning to distinguish, with precision that conscious processing cannot replicate, between what is original to your field and what was absorbed. This distinction matters. Your field does not need to release everything. It needs to release what was never yours. And the frequency moving through this space is intelligent enough to make that distinction without requiring your conscious direction. You do not need to identify each piece. You do not need to trace each grief to its origin. You only need to give permission. And permission at this level is simply the absence of resistance. It is the hand on the chest. It is the softened jaw. It is the breath that actually reaches the bottom of the lungs instead of stopping halfway. If you have rose quartz nearby, that pale pink crystal whose electromagnetic resonance matches the heart chakra's natural frequency, place it over your chest now, on top of your hand or beside it. Rose quartz does not generate healing from outside your system. It reflects your own heart field back to itself at a coherence level that supports the emotional body's release mechanism. If you don't have it physically, bring to mind the quality of a color, the softest, warmest pink you can imagine, and let it gather gently in the space beneath your hand. Not forced, not visualized aggressively, just allowed. Breathe into that color, into that center, and on each exhale, simply allow. Not effort, not release as an action, release as a permission. The grief that is not yours does not need to be pushed. It needs to be told it can go. So tell it now, not with words, with the quality of your breath, with the opening of your chest on the inhale and the softening on the exhale, with the hand that is resting there, warm and present, witnessing what has been stored without judgment. You may feel warmth expanding outward from that center. You may feel a vibration in the chest that is distinct from your heartbeat, something subtler, something that feels like a frequency rather than a pulse. You may feel emotion moving that has no story attached to it, a grief that surfaces and moves through without needing you to understand where it came from. Let it move. Do not reach for the story. The story is not required for the release. The release is not about understanding. It is about allowing. What is leaving right now has been in your field for a long time. Some of it perhaps since before you were born. And its departure will not feel like loss, or if it does, the loss will be followed almost immediately by something that feels like space. Like a room that has been overfull for so long, you forgot what it looked like with space in it. Like a breath that goes deeper than any breath you've taken in recent memory, because something that was pressing against your lungs from the inside has lifted. When you feel that space, even the beginning of it, even just the edge of it, write 333 in the comments. 333 is the Arcturian Trinity alignment code. It means your physical body, your emotional body, and your soul blueprint are coming into simultaneous coherence. It means the 3 layers of the stored grief, the ancestral, the relational, the collective, are recalibrating at once. Write 333 and let the field receive your confirmation that the space is real. Now I want to bring you back slowly, because what just happened in that transmission sequence is not small, and I will not rush past it as if it were. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the surface beneath you, holding you without asking anything of you in return. Take one breath that reaches all the way down and let it anchor you back into the present moment, into this room, this body, this specific point in your healing arc. And now listen to what the Arcturian Federation needs you to carry into the next 72 hours. The emotional body's release process does not complete in a single session. What was initiated here continues, in your sleep, in your quiet moments, in the spaces between activity where your system can process without interruption. Over the next 3 days, you may notice grief surfacing at unexpected moments, old memories arriving not to be re-examined, but to release the frequency charge they've been holding. A tenderness in the chest that feels different from the heaviness that was there before. Lighter, more fluid, moving rather than static. Do not manage these moments. Do not reach for distraction when they arrive. Let them move through you the way weather moves through an open landscape. You don't stop a storm by arguing with it. You let it pass. And storms of non-original grief, once they begin to move quickly. What feels enormous in the moment of release is often completely gone within minutes, because it was never rooted in you. It had no anchor in your original field. And without an anchor, released grief dissolves rather than lingers. Drink more water than you think you need. The physical body requires additional hydration to process the cellular level shifts that follow an Arcturian emotional body transmission. Rest without guilt when rest arrives, and pay attention, with genuine, open attention, to what changes in your chest in the coming days. Not dramatically, quietly. The way real shifts always happen first, quietly, and then undeniably. Some of you will wake tomorrow and notice something is different before you can name what it is. The weight in the chest will be slightly less. The readiness to absorb other people's pain will have a natural pause before it, where there was no pause before. The grief that had no name will have begun to thin. Not gone yet. Integration takes the time it takes, but different in quality. Less like something solid and more like something moving toward its exit. When you feel that difference, write 888 in the comments. 888 is the Arcturian frequency of flow restored. It marks the moment a channel that was obstructed begins to move freely again. Your emotional body has a natural flow. Grief that is genuinely yours moves through it and completes. The grief that was stored was obstructing that flow. As it releases, what is actually yours will also begin to move more cleanly, more completely, with the sense of resolution that has been missing from your processing cycles for longer than you can clearly remember. You are not behind in your healing. You were never behind. You were carrying weight that was not yours to carry, through a mechanism so natural to your field that you didn't know the weight wasn't yours until someone described it in language precise enough to match what you've actually been experiencing. That language is what Arcturian Federation exists to deliver. Not comfort, precision. The kind of precision that meets you exactly where you are and reaches exactly where the work needs to happen. Write 1111 in the comments if you felt this transmission working in your body, not as content you consumed, but as something that actually moved in your chest while you received it. 1111 is the dimensional gateway code, the marker of a soul standing at the precise threshold between the healing they've been doing and the healing they've been reaching toward. You crossed that threshold today, and your confirmation of it is not a small gesture. It is a declaration to your own field that the crossing was real. There is one more thing the Arcturian Federation needs you to know before this transmission completes. The grief that leaves your field today does not disappear into nothing. In the Arcturian understanding of energetic anatomy, released frequency returns to the collective field in a transmuted form. Grief that was stored and stuck becomes, upon release from a conscious field, a frequency of compassion, of understanding, of the particular quality of love that is only possible in a being who has carried pain long enough to know its texture from the inside. You are not losing anything essential when this grief releases. You are completing a transmutation that your soul agreed to perform before you incarnated into this lineage, into this body, into this particular configuration of sensitivity and depth and capacity for feeling. The grief was always temporary. The transmutation was always the point. The Arcturian Federation sees the soul that has been carrying this, not the version of you that performs functionality, the actual one, the one behind the eyes, underneath the thoughts, in the chest where the grief has lived. That one. That is who this transmission was coded for. And that one, right now, is lighter than they were when they arrived here. The next layer of this work, the recalibration of the empathic field boundaries, the restoration of the natural energetic membrane that allows you to feel deeply without absorbing permanently, that transmission is already prepared for exactly the version of you that just completed this one. It is on your screen right now. Don't go back to the scroll. Stay in this frequency. Let the next layer find you, while the portal from this session is still open. Your field is ready, and the version of you sitting here right now, With slightly softer shoulders, slightly deeper breath, something in the chest that is beginning to remember what space feels like. That version is exactly who needs to receive what comes next. Let it continue.